Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We're joined today by Tyler Whitley, who is the head football coach at Taft, which is a boarding school in New England. If you haven't heard of them, Google them, the Ivy Leagues of the independent school world. But ultimately, he's also the associate athletic director. He's an admissions counselor. He's the recruiting coordinator. Like any good boarding school, he is wearing 7,000 hats that he has to juggle every single day. Coach, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, let's dive in. Let's help the audience figure out who we're talking to. Take me through your background as a coach. How'd you end up doing this? What was the process? Hey, went to high school here, played X, went to college, did this, ended up here, boom, right through the ladder.
Sure, we'll take you way back. So I grew up in Torrington, Connecticut, which is a school about 30 minutes from the current campus here at Taft. My dad was a physical education teacher, football coach, basketball coach, literally coached it all, coached swimming, coached everything in between. So I grew up around sports as a little guy and fell in love with it early on. My first sport, like many kids, was soccer. I started playing soccer at 5 years old and figuring that out. My dad was a varsity football coach at a public school in the area, and I couldn't believe he was letting me play soccer at that age and not play football. I played soccer all the way up until I was 9 years old, and then I finally got that football itch. Went and played Pop Warner and also was a basketball player, loved that sport as well, and just grew throughout the years as a youngster, watching my dad coach, going to games, playing in the back while he was coaching them up. And then I was lucky enough to come to Taft for high school. So I was a public school family. No one in my family didn't even know boarding schools existed. I walked by Taft's campus on a walk for cystic fibrosis, and I saw the place and I was like, that's a high school? That's ridiculous. I want to go to that place. And was lucky enough to be admitted here, and our friendly rivals chose Taft and came here for all 4 years. Football, basketball, and track were my three sports here. I finished my senior season as a captain for all three, and then went off in college and played football at Wesleyan University, where I was a 4-year letter winner there, and got to the end and was like, oh boy, I'm not a pro. So where am I going? And came down to two tracks. I was a government international relations major, and that was one track I could take, and was graduate school, or maybe was going to see where if I could land in the FBI or CIA or something like that. And the other option was to try coaching. And I loved my boarding school experience. It changed my life, opened up doors I never would have had. And so I said, let's try this coaching thing. And I was lucky enough to be hired by Chris Adamson at Salisbury School. He was the head coach there at the time. Chris actually ended up out in California at Viewpoint School, and he was at a number of different places. And he runs a group called Gridiron Imports, which brings kids from Europe and all over the world actually to America, U.S. boarding schools and colleges. Chris hired me for my first job. I coached about one practice, and I was like, yep, that's what I want to do. I was hooked early, coached football and basketball at Salisbury, loved that experience, but I wanted a little bit more. And I said, let me try to be this college coach that I want to be. I took a GA job at Sacred Heart University, which is an FCS school here in Connecticut. Loved the high level sports. I loved the X's and O's. The lifestyle was tough. And I was getting married. My wife and I met at Taft. So we were planning out our future, making no money. As a GA, I would think I was working at Planet Fitness. I was a GA. I was taking classes. My wife was getting her master's. And we were like, this is not going to work. So we made some decisions. I left Sacred Heart and thought I was going to be a business guy, going to do something with business. I spent 4 months doing like in a business world, and then I was like, there's no way I got to go back. And I was so lucky that the Taft job came open. So the Taft head football job came open. I applied for the job, obviously knew a lot of people here, and that was really helpful. Had a really great experience as a student. And then I was hired for the head coaching job here in an admissions counselor role at 26. So took over the head coaching job at 26. I've been here ever since. And there's my story.
And what year was that?
So 2012 was my first season here at Taft.
Awesome. So we just now finished year 13 or 14?
This will be the season 14. We're on year 13.
Yeah, season 14. Wow. Okay, cool. That's great. Love that. Before I go into my normal path of coaching, I would love for you to give a little color to people that are listening that have no idea what it is schools like yours and mine are. Sure. So I'm walking by the school and I look at it and I want to go there. And yet dad's a public school teacher. You're in that world. Just a little background about what the boarding school world is. how accessible or not it is
Yeah.
for a guy. My mother was a public school teacher. I went to school here, similar to you. Hey, I'm going to explore and be curious. But most people who listen to this have no idea what you and I are talking about.
Yeah. Like I said, my whole
And
family.
really quickly, East Coasters have a better idea because you throw a rock, you hit a boarding school. In
Right.
California, like there's two of us.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, as a public school kid, it didn't even enter my world that boarding schools existed, or even private schools. I guess I knew about a few day schools and private schools that were in the area, especially where we are in the northwest corner. I had heard of these names that were, ooh, Taft or Hotchkiss or like Wave on Old Farms. What do these places really mean? And I'd never really been on campus of any school. But when I walked by this place, I was just shocked at the beauty, number one, but just it's a mini college. We have 600 kids in the school and 226 acres of an amazing campus with the most beautiful facilities. And comparing that to your public school is shocking that it even existed. And for someone who had coming from that environment, I went into the admissions process having absolutely no clue what I was doing. I literally just took the three schools that were closest to my home and I said, oh, I'll apply to those and we'll see what happens. And lucky enough, I had done really well in middle school. I had progressed as an athlete and had great interviews here, and it just clicked, and I was given the opportunity that was not very accessible for someone in my background. These schools, especially at the time, you're dealing with the top 1% of the population that are able to access a place like Taft or Stevenson. Things have obviously changed over, like I enrolled here in class in 2000. In 25 years, things have changed greatly in the access and the type of students that come to these places and the financial aid that's involved and able to give these kids opportunities. And I guess back in 2000, I think the tuition was $28,000 and now it's like $78,000. So a little bit different in different world back then. It really has progressed amazingly, but like if you're me in 2000 looking at this place and saying, is that possible? It would be a big question mark to be able to get to go to that type of place.
No doubt. No, I appreciate that. And it's helpful again for the audience listening. The other thing I think it's funny because you and I were just talking about this before we started recording is I was football, basketball, track, letter winner, captain in all three. And yet we were just talking about how abnormal that is now.
Yeah.
I would just love to get behind the curtain of your brain, knowing the experience you had and yet what you're dealing with both as a coach and as an athletic administrator, where the youth sports industrial complex has essentially removed that kid from
Yeah.
existence.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And there's so much money involved in youth sports and this whole process where it's forcing kids to believe that they have to specialize in order to be successful. And maybe there is some truth to that, just given the fact that there's so much demand for them to constantly get that next level of whatever it is. I still firmly believe, as someone who grew up as a multi-sport athlete, that it's really important that kids are moving their bodies in different ways, that they are getting a break from the same movement over and over again. And I think it also helps them as a teammate. You're not going to be the best player in every single sport. So it's good being the great teammate that you might have to come off the bench, or you might have to be the guy that does the dirty work in basketball because I wasn't a great shooter, but I can play defense, I can handle the ball, and I can pass. So I think you find ways to become better athletes, and that's important to these kids. And we still very much hold the line, or try to hold the line against our kids and say, hey, you should be playing multiple sports, but it's really hard. And I get it for the kids and the parents in particular who want to give their kids the best opportunity to get to the best school to play at the highest level. What can I do? What shouldn't I do? And what's too much? And I think there's diminishing returns on a lot of the things that families are doing in this age of specialization, where you can get more out of it by playing multiple sports.
No doubt. And it's just such an interesting dynamic that I actively fight against, and sometimes other people just throw their hands up, and it's like we're in this weird spot because we've been doing this for a long time. We put a ton of kids in college, and what the reality is and what people want to believe the reality is are so far apart.
Right.
Yet they almost don't want to hear that. And so it's this weird spot that you and I find ourselves in that I just was curious what as a guy that was a three-sport letter winner, then you go on to play college athletics because that's what those dudes do ultimately, and how that doesn't jive with the outside noise today, what that feels. But I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, back to the normal line of questioning. So Tyler Whitley, take over as a head coach at a high school after a short stint as an assistant in two different places. What did you realize right away that you needed to figure out? Because even with mentorship, even with apprenticeship, you notice you're never ready. But I'm always curious for newer coaches, not say old, young, whatever, what advice we can provide them that you got to be on these three things, because if you're not, everything else falls apart.
Yeah, I interestingly enough had a pretty good line that I remember when from the outgoing coach who ended up having a very successful career in private schools. And he said, "Oh, you're going to be fine with the X's and O's. It's the other stuff." And it was like, the other stuff. What does that mean? I was just taking it as a head coach for the first time, and I didn't really, you couldn't understand what the other stuff is, especially at a boarding school where you are everything to the program. You are not just coaching the kids, you're advising them on their college process. You're going to listen to their reports that their teachers are sharing about them and talking about, hey, why are we getting those that grade? Why haven't you got the lab report in? It's all of the other things. It's the talking with the college coaches. It's the managing of your own staff for the first time. And I walked into an environment where I had very little football knowledge amongst my staff. So it was like, oh, I'm calling the offense, I'm calling the defense, I'm also preparing practices, I'm doing everything. But I think the thing that you don't really realize is how to manage your own expectations, how to deal with the parents that when we're pretty lucky in that we are in a boarding environment, so they're not exactly right over my shoulder as you're making decisions, but they're still there. And dealing with the parents, dealing with your expectations, and I think also trying to balance. Because as you're coming in as a new coach, you want to hit the ground running and you want to be super successful, and you are going to give every ounce of yourself to that program, and then realizing, oh, I still need to see my significant other, and I still need to do all the other things in my life that are really important. And then for us, the last thing I thought about was like the kids on in my program initially when I started, and very much still the same now, is that you have in football in particular, you have, let's say, 55 different kids there, and they all have different motivations for being there. And trying to hit them all and balance that is super hard when you have your kids that want to be major division 1 FBS players on one side, and then you've got the 100-pound kid who's just want to try football and want to be a part of a team and want to see wear that uniform, and trying to be able to create an environment where they all feel like they're valued and they all feel like they're getting a good experience while winning games. I think that's a really challenging balance.
Yeah, it is. And ironically, you'll get this. I started this in COVID to almost serve the coaches we deal with. And again, for people that aren't aware, at boarding schools, often you'll get someone and it's, hey, I need you to go coach bocce ball. And it's, I've never played that. Sorry, you'll figure it
Yeah.
out. And it's like, how can we, who have a mentorship tree of coaches we've played for, we've worked for, and we can call, provide a digital database of mentorship for that crew? Right.
Mm.
And ultimately, that's why I asked that question, because they may be coming into it and you're handing them a clipboard. Hey, here's your kids. Go figure it out. And it's what? What am I supposed to do with this? And you just mentioned I came in and you were the guy that had to do everything because your crew was probably other duties as assigned by the head of
Right.
school.
Yep.
And how are you navigating that space? So I appreciate you sharing that. As you have evolved throughout the years, and again, unique at our type school where you have a Division 1 athlete and a kid that's never played in the same program, and you got to serve them both.
Yep.
What would you say is the best thing you do in your program that has the largest ripple effect on that culture you're trying to create, that maybe you brought with you or it's evolved over time that would go with you when you leave because of the impact it has?
Yeah, I think in the unique situation that I'm in and that we're in, we do have that really wide range of ability and experience, and trying to serve those kids well and trying to have them look back as some of the best years of their life. for me, I think creating a culture of inclusivity and a place where our post grad that's going to a Division I scholarship school is going to say hello to that little ninth grader in the hallway. I think that's a really cool experience for kids that we strive for. Taft's motto is not to be served, but to serve. So I think there's a really kind of service mindset, at least it kind of earwormed into me when I was a student there. And that's a lot of the reason why I came back is that there's this service mindset. And I think trying to develop that amongst our program is really important. So we are one team at Taft. So we practice together, we warm up together, we do everything. Everyone is on the varsity football team. If you play football at Taft, I'm on the varsity football team, even if you're never going to play. And I think that's important to what we're striving to achieve is that those kids feel that and that we practice together. So we have a lot of traditions. I resurrected a fight song from like the 1960s that we sing after every victory, which is really fun time. This is a kind of a cool tradition that I didn't start, but we continued. We have milk and cookies on Friday nights before our games on Saturdays. So we'll have 9:45 and we're lucky we're in a boarding environment. So most of our kids are boarders. They'll come down from the dorm at 9:45. We'll have milk and cookies. We'll hang out. We'll watch the college game, decompress, and just have a relaxing time together. And then we'll have our open floor. We'll pass the ball around, talk to your teammates. That tends to be a really powerful time that we have that kids always 10 years from now or 10-year grads will come back and say, hey, I remember milk and cookies when, this happened. So that's, I think, a really cool thing that we do. Let's see, I'm trying to think what other things that we have.
Oh, that's good for now. I think the point of that is, as coaches, we're always trying to figure out a way to move the needle, right? And often we think it's tactical. And more often than not, it has nothing to do with that. And I think ultimately, the more different things we can glean from that and share with others, the more coaches can realize that, yo, the X's and O's are fine. But
Sure.
if you're not building the culture of, as you said, inclusivity and service, what's really going with these kids to the
Right.
next phase of their life, whatever that may be. And I think that's the message that I hope people continue to hear on this, that I get reminders every day in regards to how I can do better at my job. And as I was joking, I just had a conversation with a kid and it's like, didn't go great. We put it back together and we're in a good spot. But the idea is always bad communication is better than no communication because ultimately you have a chance to repair that. Whereas if you're not talking to them and they're spinning in their head, like that's where all the problems occur. Out of curiosity, are all of your games on Saturday, home and away?
Almost. And this is crazy for pretty much everyone who else coaches football. We don't have lights on our field.
We don't either, but and I know the boarding school world, you're usually like Wednesday, Saturday game days.
Correct.
So my curiosity is more, are there any Friday night lights that you ever get to experience?
Yes, so we did go this year. We had two away Friday night games this year, one of which we had a bus of kids came over from our school, which so we got the full Friday Night Lights feel to it. We've brought lights in the past, which is super fun, and you got the whole school out there, and it's an amazing experience. And then you get on the field and you can't really play football because you can't see the ball, and it's just an ugly game. But no, we typically play Saturday afternoons. We'll play a few Friday night games, but almost all of our opponents will have lights. And then I think it's been something for many years that the boarding schools have a Wednesday, Saturday split for their games. So they try not to bleed into the class time or study hall time or things on Friday nights, but it's been got a little bit more lax as the years have gone on.
Yeah, follow question and give everyone but me specifically the league you're in. Is it all boarding schools? Or do you have some day schools in there? And then your non-league schedule in California is different. We're all in one federation, so publics play privates. That's why there's no recruiting like you guys can do because we're all in the same sandbox. But you guys aren't. Do you ever play people outside of the private school world?
So we only play private schools. The league that we're in is called the Founders League, and it's a relatively similar across sports for the Founders League. But this Founders League also has a number of non-football playing members, so we do play out of league games. We actually just went through this big whole realignment in New England prep schools with scheduling and stuff last year. But we do play now, we play all boarding schools except for Dexter Southfield, which is in the Boston area. That's an out of conference game for us where they're an adjunct member of our conference. So that's the one school. Over the past 14 years, we've played other day schools, but no publics, all private schools.
And this is, I'm just going to be in the weeds with my own curiosity now. Are there any of the schools, let's say in the Founders League, or maybe that aren't, because is Salisbury part of that?
Salisbury's on the other side of it. They're not in the Founders League, but they are a very similar school.
So would a school like Salisbury, let's say, and pick anybody else, go and let me test ourselves against the best public school in the area, or none of the privates play any publics?
No, they do not, unless it's a scrimmage. There are scrimmages that happen, and I would say in the area over my time, certainly back in 2000, I'd say that public schools were probably better than private schools in
No
athletic
doubt. Yeah.
across the board, and now it's completely flipped. So, especially in football, in the past 8 years, our league has exploded and is
Okay.
now one of the best leagues in the Northeast and can
Yeah.
compete with most in the country because we do recruit nationally and internationally. So that has completely changed the landscape of how New England and Northeast schools function and where you would go if you want to play at the highest level.
Yeah. And I guess that was really my curiosity where it's okay, you're matriculating kids to all levels of college athletics. And how, from the outside looking in, are they evaluating the talent level when there's no crossover play? Where we've got like De La Salle out here, who I'm sure you're aware of, who's also playing Folsom because you got to get the two best teams to match up against each other. So it was just more of how are these recruiters even really evaluating, like, we're not seeing them play against inner city school. Like, we're not seeing them. And so, anyway, but thank you. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
As an athletic administrator, you're coming in as the associate AD. Same question as when you started being the head coach. Like, what did you realize right away that you needed to figure out, number one? And what takeaways have you discovered over the time you've been doing that have found their way back into your football program that you wouldn't have been exposed to were you not wearing that other hat?
Yeah, I would say first of all, it really helped me that I knew Taft extremely well. Obviously, I went to school here, but I also worked as an admissions counselor here for a number of years. I was the head coach for a number of years before I moved into the associate director role. So we hired an athletic director, Andy Dunn from Yale University, who came in 5 years ago. And Andy's fantastic. And he basically helped hire me to get into the associate role. So I look at it as I was Andy's Taft mentor. I was able to help him through what life was like at boarding school, what Taft was like, how it was going to fit, because he was coming from a Division I collegiate world and coming into a boarding school environment. So my role was very much to be support and to help him learn this environment while I was able to learn from him on the athletic directing side because I hadn't never done anything in that department. So it was a little bit of a give and take in our roles together to get to where we wanted to be as a unit.
Love that. And so 5 years you've been doing this?
Yep. Yep.
So over that 5 years, what have you now been exposed to that's made its way back into your football program? That again, and the question I really ask is, what have you learned watching other teams that aren't football teams? Because as coaches, we think that's where we should be looking versus, no, actually, you had tennis duty yesterday and you were watching this and you took that back to your team.
I think it's been really cool for me as a coach to watch some of my colleagues. And we are very lucky, in my opinion, to have some of the best coaches in New England and to watch how they run their programs. I could point to just three coaches just on the male side where we've been lucky to have coaches here for 10 years in that kind of 10-year range. Our head basketball coach, Shavar Bernier, has been a head coach for 13 years. I was his assistant for 7 or 8, I think, and very different coach than myself. So I got a chance to kind of watch how he navigates his team, the intensity he brings, the demand that he asks for his players, and just how he practices. He's one of the practices got to be harder than the game coaches. And that was not necessarily me initially. So we just got to get them to Saturday so they're ready to play. So that was cool to see how intense he coaches his practices. So he demands the most out of his players We have a fantastic hockey coach, a boys hockey coach here, Ryan Shannon, who was a NHL player and Taft alum. And you can just see the quiet intensity and like the organizational skills that he brings. And then we have our fantastic soccer coach, Ozzy Parenti, who just won his second New England championship this year, who's just creates this culture where his kids are just like so tight together. So I like those are three coaches that are my colleagues that I feel lucky that I'm coaching with them and they're coaching at such a high level in their own sport with me. And we've been doing it together for a while so that we can play off each other and take the little bits and pieces from each other that work. And we don't necessarily have to sit down and have in-depth coaching conversations. It's more of just taking note and watching and seeing how their kids react to them and seeing how they push their kids in certain ways.
No, and I appreciate that because I think if you're just the football coach, let's say, right, or I'm just the basketball coach, or that guy's just the soccer coach, our default is to focus on our team. If we're going to ask for help, it's going to come from somebody else in our discipline.
Yeah.
And we don't take the time, especially it's funny you mentioned the soccer coach, which you said is the same season as football, which makes it even harder to go and watch and observe and learn. But you're in season together, so you can debrief problems. But I joke that I'm the worst soccer AD on the planet because it's during basketball, and I have a tough time being able to go be present for them. And like our mutual friend Philip, it's like I've seen Philip conduct training in 9 years like twice.
Yeah.
And it's because it's the only time we don't have a conflict, right? And so I think it's neat for anybody that's listening to this, get out of your circle and go watch your colleagues because there's a ton to be learned there and you don't have to go to Vegas for a clinic. Like it's right there on your campus, right? And how do we do that and schedule that into our day so that not only we can get better, but it helps them. Like
Yeah.
our water polo coach and I talk every day because my office is right by the pool and it's me asking him questions, it's him asking me questions, and it's just the rising tide lifts all ships type deal, which I'm not intentionally sitting there and going, let me learn how to coach, but I get to see it enough where it's, hey, this is something that I would love to do. On that same note, and I've been framing this differently in the last handful of years, but our society has become so polarized that it's almost looked down upon to have dissenting voice and to challenge your opinions and versus what has become normalized is just people validating where you are. And so I always just ask, what's something you've most recently changed your mind on? Because I don't think we do that enough anymore. You're looking for somebody to agree with you rather than, no, tell me where my blind spots are here. And so I'm curious, and it's not about coaching, Tyler. It's more about like in your entire cross section of hats, be it a husband, right? Be it a admissions guy, be it a coach, be it just a human walking the earth. What's something that you've purposefully, you know what? I used to be pretty dug in over here, and now I'm over here, and here's why and why I made that decision and what I've benefited from as a result of that decision.
Sure. I think the really amazing thing and valuable thing that we have here at Taft is that we're an intentionally diverse community that the school creates. We have kids from 52 different countries and 34 different states, and from all walks of life, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all political leanings. And then I think our faculty mirrors that as well. So you're constantly being challenged. Your ideas are being challenged and you're learning from people. And I think one of the great experiences that I've had is being able to bring in international players to play for us at Taft. So I've had students from right now, our starting quarterback was from Sweden. We have another Swedish kid on our team. Our starting nose guard was from Lagos, Nigeria. We've had Danes, we've had Germans, we've had kids from Korea and and she's all over the place, China, Hong Kong. So it's a pretty neat melting pot of kids where you're not only learning about their cultures, but you're really learning about how to see them as people, how they see the world, and that they're coming in with these different colored glasses than us and realizing like they're not coming from the same background that we're coming from, but they still want to achieve the same things that our domestic kids do. The kid from New York City, right down the road, and are looking for ways to get there. So I think being in this community has really pushed me out of my comfort zone and showing me a lot of different people and a lot of different ways of looking at life or about how to get to the same place.
No, I love that. And is there anything specific as a result of that exposure that you can point to and say, I've made this intentional shift? And it can be something as simple as I don't eat breakfast anymore, even though they've told us our whole life that it's the most important meal. But I'm just like, I like to give people nuggets to think about because if not, we're just going through our day.
Yeah. You know what? This is just very odd, but and not maybe necessarily applicable. What I really got into in this summer was 10,000 steps, walking 10,000 steps. And I had never been that guy. And then get your moment of Zen and you get your 30 minutes and you get your 10,000 steps. And that was for me, I was like, never doing that. That's ridiculous. But by the time I hit the end of the summer, my shoes were worn out. And I was like, I feel great. This is awesome. So that's just one thing, I guess, just challenging your own beliefs of something that you don't necessarily think is really useful, I think was very useful for me this summer.
Yeah. And from a coaching standpoint, here's a question I'll throw at you because basketball is a little different than football, obviously. So you mentioned that the intensity with which the basketball coach runs his practices to make them harder than the games. And as football, you're just trying to get to Saturday. And I
Mhm.
joke all the time that like football practice sucks, man. Nobody wants to be there because there's so much install, there's so much standing around. And I asked my football coaches a couple years ago because like I brought in a guy to work with our team in basketball for 3 days. And like we would start the sessions every day by playing 5-on-5. We're not doing warm ups. It's 5-on-5. Let's go. And so I asked the football coach, I'm like, hey, when's the last time you just played 11-on-11 to start practice? He's like, huh? You don't do that. And so but throw that out there as a football coach. At any point in your 14 seasons, have you played like 11-on-11 live in practice, like as a core thing of what we're doing as a team? Would you ever do that? Yes. Why not? Think about that
Well,
concept.
I will say there's so much strategy, play, installation, etc. And that in such a coach-driven game where coaches are making decisions on every play of what to do, that would be really hard to do that. But I would say the added piece is that it's such a physical game and it's such and a game you can pick up injuries that's scary. And especially if a team of 35 real varsity guys, if you lose a guy to a turned ankle, then and it's your starting receiver, then you're in trouble.
Yep.
So it's definitely challenging, but I would say there's one thing that we do during preseason, and preseason is the one time where you have a little bit of leeway. And we're so short on time as it is. We have
Oh,
two
yeah.
weeks of preseason leading up to our game. We have one scrimmage, so it is as tight can be when normal public schools will have a month and a
Oh,
half
yeah. It's a whole
to
different beast.
preseason. But I do say there's one thing. So we call it Hell's Bells,
Okay.
and it's during preseason and we'll be in our normal drills or whatever we're doing individual drills and then Hell's Bells will come on the loudspeaker and then it's live and it's you're in the 20-yard line and it's live and you got to go score and the other team's got to stop you and that's it. It's like less than 5 minutes, but
Hmm.
it's Hell's Bells and you got to go.
Yep.
And the kids love it.
Nice.
And like you get this spike of adrenaline, the kids go crazy, and then it's amazing. And I'm there holding the whistle. Please don't get hurt.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
But it's useful and it just puts them in that game mindset.
Yeah.
And then then after you do it, then the kids ask for Hell's Bells every day, and you're like, we're not doing it every day.
The other thing I asked, which again, it's the basketball coach in me, is there any reality, any pathway to, because like you said, there's so much strategy, so much play calling, everything's scripted, but it's like, what does it look like in football if you're just lining up and your line's got some sort of blocking scheme that they can apply to any situation, and your skill guys are like reading the defense and collectively making decisions, almost like a read and react basketball situation where it's like you're not really calling a play, they're looking at leverage and like they're making reads, and you're just practicing that way, or is that just psycho as well?
We do have some plays, pass plays in particular, where receivers are making decisions whether, for example, a deep choice concept, if we're running receiver in deep choice concept and he has a choice to make, run vertical, run a post, or run a curl, depending on the defender, very similar in basketball, is he's making a decision within the play, not pre-snap, but post-snap in the action of making decision at 14 yards, I got to make what decision. So that would be the closest I'd say to like the really feeling like you're a basketball player and making your own individual decision. Ultimately, someone would have to call the play to start it. So it'd have to be the quarterback to get it without a coach present. But there are decisions that are being made mid-play, like a basketball game, but you need to have the structure initially set before they can
Yeah.
make those decisions.
Yeah. No, my coaches look at me like I'm crazy when I ask them stuff. I'm like, why don't you just
Yeah,
do this? You can't do that. I'm like,
I do
how do you know? All right, let me go back to this. So, if you're going back to the beginning, and we all evolve for good or for bad, but it's like, how has your approach changed over
Mm,
not just your 14 seasons as a head coach, but from day one when you said, I'm not going to be a pro, so let me get into coaching, and
yep.
you came out of it, this is what I'm doing, and now you're 20 seasons into this. How has it changed? What shifted
Yeah.
for you?
I think there's a couple things that I go to. One, as you get deeper into your coaching career, you understand how important the balance is between your family and the things that you're doing. Luckily enough, saw that very early and knew that I wanted this life in which I could balance those things. And there's another track that you could certainly take. And I wanted this environment because I know I can make the biggest impact on kids at this age. And that's why I wanted to be in this environment. So that balance one is important. The things that have really evolved for me, one would be trusting your assistants. I think that's really hard and was extremely hard for me early in my process, especially when you don't think your assistants are prepared to do the things at the level that you're going to do them at. And that's challenging. But trusting your assistants and finding the right people you can trust, that is super important. And I feel like I have a really good group now that I can trust to take on some of that responsibility. The other thing that I think of is just this age of specialization that we talked about and how it's increased. I think we have to be more flexible with the multi-sport athlete. And in the past, when I started, it was like, if you're a multi-sport athlete and you wanted to play football for us, okay, if it's football season and you're a lacrosse player, I better not see your lacrosse stick. You better put that thing away. Like it's football season. It's football season, football season. And now I think it's like these kids are so driven and pushed in so many ways. I got to be practicing. I got to be practicing. I got to be doing this. I got to be working on that. So it's like you have to be flexible enough. Hey, it's okay to put the stick down and you should rest. But if you want to go throw with your friends on a Sunday, go. If you want to go pitch on Sunday, go pitch. If you want to go play pickup ball, play pickup. When I was like, and there's a young coach, it was like, if I see you out playing basketball, you turn an ankle, like we're done. And I think it's become more of like the kids have so much pressure on them that they do need some of that outlet. And the last thing that I go to is like this world of NIL and in recruiting and the transfer portal and everything is insane. And I wouldn't have bet on this when I started. And now we have kids that have agents, players on my team that have agents, juniors in high school. And I'm getting calls from agents who want to hear about my freshmen and sophomores. And it's, whoa, what are we doing? There's so much money involved with this. But on the other side of things, and we've placed probably nearing over 100 kids in college over my 14 years here in all ranges from major division one. Most of our kids are high academic, like Ivy League, Patriot League kids, NESCAC, high academic D3 kids. But the crunch that is had on kids and making it so challenging to get a spot at any level, you have to recalibrate what success in placement looks like for you and what that is success. And I can in basketball, it's insane. I don't even know how there's anybody goes to play basketball in college anymore. We're lucky in football. You got a 100+ roster. You can find a spot home, but basketball, good luck, man. So I think the flexibility aspect and the understanding and helping families understand that you need to recalibrate. You're not all going to get land at Harvard and Yale and Princeton. And what does success look like to you? You know?
And I appreciate that because it's funny you said I had to adjust my thinking on multi-sport kids. And it's like we have a tournament this week in our first three games of the year. And one of my kids is going to be here today. And then I lose her for the next 2 days because she's
Right.
going to a softball thing at Auburn. And like she's an SEC recruit, and it's what is my option? She doesn't play hoop? No, like
Right.
she's playing.
Exactly. What am I going to melt down and then not have this kid help us?
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. And so, and then this other thing you're saying was funny. If I catch you playing basketball and you're pissed off, it's like I'm similar in telling these guys, like, yo, don't come in here and hoop. You're a football player right now. In basketball season, it's like, yo, don't be out playing baseball. It's basketball season. And it's not that I don't want them playing. I do. I just worry so much about, I don't want you getting hurt. And then that coach is pissed off at me because I was not respecting their time. But then I also realized, like, our best competitors, and these are ones that are playing college sports, the reason they're good is because they never stop competing. And so it's, well, I can't be at practice right now. Let's go play pickup. And it's just, that's how they're wired. And I had to get my head wrapped around, you know what? That's what makes those guys good. And if they get hurt, it's going to happen anyway. Like, I'm not going to try to prevent it.
That's right.
Which is a total shift from where I was. It's funny. And I don't know what the weather's like in terrain where you're at. But no, I do. But we have the skiing's big out here in the Sierras, right? And so I grew up skiing. My kids don't, because I never felt it was fair for me to go and not let my players go when I first started coaching. And now it's, kids are going to do what they're going to do. I wish I could keep them off the slopes, but whatever. It's funny how your mind shifts as you get older, and I'm not dying on that hill anymore.
No, exactly. Which I was ready in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely you are. Like, this is what we're doing. And it's, the world don't work that way. Sorry, it's good to have that idea, but yeah, no. Anyway, all right, coach, last question. Hat or admissions hat? Hell, or coaching hat. What's the best tool you've recently adopted in the last year and a half that's been transformational in either your efficiency, your communication? And I'll give you an example, right? You scheduled this using Calendly, which is something I picked up on the pod, but I use nonstop in every other aspect of my life, which has streamlined and taken away a bunch of wasted time trying to schedule meetings.
It's a good question. Tool. I'm so behind in the AI tool game, and I wish I were better with that stuff. I wish it didn't, like, this new wave didn't hit during the season, because that would have been really helpful. I don't, to be honest, I don't have a real tool that I would recommend at this time, other than one tried and true thing that I've started when I was a kid. And I'll tell you, this is the one thing that I truly believe in. I schedule and I write down my schedule every day, and literally write. And I think that's super important for me, and how my brain works is I will write down my schedule hour by hour, or what my schedule looks like. And especially with someone who wears that many hats, and it's okay, this is going to be my admissions meeting is over here. And then I got to make sure that I'm going to call Cal and talk about our players. And then so for me, it's the scheduling piece is super important, and the tactileness, I think, it for me just clicks. So that's one thing that I do that is not a fun tool, but it's literally just writing things down every aspect of my day.
I love that. It's funny because my version of that is my Google Calendar, which is, I live on my calendar. If it's not there, it doesn't exist. And it's, I'm getting a ping, I got to go to this next meeting. And without your schedule, it's the same thing. So yeah. So your best tool is a pencil, is what you're saying. There we go. Love that. All right, coach. I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for being flexible. Looking forward to continuing our further dialogue.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much for having me. It was fun, and I appreciate it.